tell me about this. You wrote a book.
I did.
What's it about?
Between Heaven and Hollywood, Chasing Your God-Given Dream. You know, it is about, you know, I think God puts all these dreams on our hearts, and it's how do you take that dream that's inside of you and put it on the writing on the wall, right, so to speak. How do you live out your passion in an actual day-to-day world? You
mentioned that you worked with Burt Reynolds and then you were fired. Was it by him directly? What happened?
Well, you know, when I moved here, I was 19 years old, and I was blessed to get on a hit show called Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds. And Burt took a liking to me. I just had one line in the first episode, and I played the best friend of his son, and he kept having me back, and he created a recurring character for me. So I was on the show for almost 3 or 4 years, and then this one particular show. Now on this show, everybody was a legend, right? They'd won an Oscar, an Emmy, or a Tony. So they had all done significant things. They were older folks, you know, it was all in the town. And so Burt had picked, you know, then there were the kids in the show as well. And so he had picked me to play himself. The high school was putting on a play about the adults in the town. So so Hilary Swank played my wife in that episode. And I immeditely went to figure out how in the world do I impersonate Burt Reynolds, because you know he's iconic, but he's also got those quirks that he does and all that stuff. So the night before, Friday night, was in front of the audience, and he said, "Hey, you wanna I'm gonna introduce everybody." And then I went up to Burt and I said, "Hey, Burt, would you be okay?" And he was going through kind of a tough time, I think, at the time with Lonnie Anderson and everything. And he had put on a little bit of weight, and as do men, you know, all of us do as we get older. And so I said, "Hey, Burt," as a dumb kid, I said, "Do you mind if I put a big pillow under my stomach and impersonate you?" And Burt said, "Sure," you know. And he was always good about, you know, being laughed at. I mean, that's part of his personality that I think he was pretty good at. But this particular time, so I came in there with a big pillow under my stomach. He introduced everybody, all the other cast, and he introduced me last. And he said, "My discovery, this kid, David White." And I come out there and I look at Burt and I look down at his stomach, and then I look at my stomach and I do my big pat on the stomach and my big, you know, that that Burt Reynolds used to always do. And I had the mustache and the you know, the hair as well, because I had been done up to look like him. And the audience roared, and Burt had this very odd smile on his face. And he had all these rings on one hand, and he turned them all around, and he literally batted me. He put his arm around me and he batted me in the head with his rings, and in front of the audience, so nobody could see it, but I could feel it. And so we did that show, and it went great. And then I got a call that I was no longer needed on the show. And I think what had happened was I had pushed him over the edge of you know, taking it way too far.
He was a little offended.
Yeah, he was offended. He was, and he was sensitive at the time because he had been going through it was toward the end of Evening Shade, and anyway. But I had gone back to him like 3 or 4 weeks later, and I apologized, and Burt and I were fine.
Fast forward a few years later, and now you're doing a TV show, because you're known for your films, but you're expanding into TV, and he's starring in your show?
Yeah, I had been on some other sitcoms and stuff, but that was like I loved that sitcom. And so we basically did a kind of a version between Newhart meets Evening Shade. It's called Hitting the Brakes, and we shot 10 episodes. And I needed to cast my dad, who is not with me in person. At the end of every episode, I read from this journal in this, you know, this kind of hotel that I've taken over. And he's from, you know, he's no longer living, but he kind of parents me through this journal. And so at the end of every episode is Burt Reynolds' voice. And I had to cast my dad, and so I was like, you know what, I haven't seen Burt in 20-some years, and he gave me my start, and it just seemed like a nice full circle thing. And so I got to go out to Florida and hang out with Burt Reynolds, and it was awesome. It was truly, I think this is something in the book that hopefully I talk about, is how the Lord is faithful, and that in the midst of our hardships, in the midst of different things that we go through, He is so faithful, and He is so, it was like an iconic moment to be able to go full circle with Burt Reynolds.
Did you guys even talk about that one awkward situation at the beginning when you guys reconnected, or did you avoid it?
We kind of, we did talk. I spent 2 days with him, so I got a lot of conversation in with him. I didn't talk about him being, him firing me because because we had already covered that, 20 years earlier when I went to him, but we did talk about a lot of different memories and that kind of stuff, and he was awesome.